The dawn rose slowly over the valley, its pale light spreading like a thin wash of cold silver across the snow-dusted fields and the dark pines that stood clustered along the slopes. The air was sharp enough to sting the lungs, clean and thin, carrying with it the quiet scent of stone, winter grass, and distant ice. High above all this, where the mountains twisted into crags shaped by centuries of wind, an eagle stood motionless on a narrow ridge of rock. Its feathers lay sleek against its body, each plume dark brown edged with gold where the rising sun touched it. The eagle's talons gripped the rough stone with quiet certainty, as though it had always belonged to this high place. The wind moved around the eagle in long, sweeping currents, cold and restless. It tugged at loose feathers and whistled softly across the crag. But the eagle did not shift or break its stillness. Its eyes were focused on the valley below, wide, sharp, unblinking. Nothing moved in the fields or along the river that wound like a frozen ribbon through the land. Smoke rose in the distance from a cluster of wooden houses, thin and gray against the pale sky. The humans were waking. The eagle watched. Far below, in one of those houses, a shepherd named Aaron stepped outside, pulling his coat tighter around his shoulders. His boots crunched in the frost as he crossed the yard to check on his small herd of sheep, their wool thick and heavy with winter roughness. He glanced up out of habit, scanning the sky. The eagle was too far to see from there, but Aaron had seen it before. It hunted across these mountains every year, when winter settled deep. Some villagers called it a good omen, strong and solitary. Others said it watched too closely, as though measuring the world beneath it. Aaron did not trouble himself with such thoughts. Winter demanded enough attention without adding stories to it. The eagle shifted its weight slightly, wings lifting half an inch as a new gust of wind rose along the cliffside. Far below, a hare broke from the shelter of a thorn bush and bounded across the open snow. The eagle's eyes followed the movement with a focus that belonged to its world alone. It did not launch into the air. The distance was too great, the hunt uncertain. The eagle did not waste strength on uncertainty. Instead, it waited, eyes never blinking, mind as still as its unmoving wings. The valley below seemed suspended in silence. The river did not whisper because it was frozen. The trees did not murmur because there was no breeze left among them. Even the animals moved with careful steps, conserving energy, measuring distance to food and shelter. Winter was not violent, it was patient. It simply waited to see who could endure it. The eagle finally opened its wings. Their span was broad and powerful, catching the rising current of air with practiced ease. It stepped from the crag, letting the wind lift its body, not fighting the pull of gravity but moving with it. The first downward stroke came only once the air had already begun to carry it. The eagle soared out over the valley, gliding between earth and sky in long, sweeping arcs. Its shadow passed soundlessly across the snowy slopes, across the dark crown of pine trees, across the slow-moving herd of sheep grazing on what dry grass they could find. Aaron looked up and saw it then, a dark shape against the pale sky. He watched the eagle wheel once, twice, then drift higher again. He respected the bird. It took only what it needed. It killed only with purpose. In that way, it was like winter itself. The eagle circled once more, rising back toward the high crags. There was no hurry in its flight. It returned to its perch, as if the mountain had called it back. From that height, the valley remained quiet and still, held in the cold calm of the season. And the eagle, like a lone sentinel carved against the sky, watched. Not as a guardian, not as a threat, but simply as a life moving through the slow, enduring rhythm of winter. The day crept forward in its slow winter pace, the sun never rising high enough to warm the stone, only grazing the ridges with a weak, pale glow before beginning its descent again. The eagle remained on the crag for a long while, watching the valley with steady patience. Hunger was present, but not urgent, a quiet reminder rather than a sharp command. It could wait. Waiting was as much a part of survival as eating. Below, the shepherd Aaron led his sheep along a narrow path close to the tree line. the flock moving in a clustered wave of wool and cautious steps. Aaron walked with the staff held loosely in his gloved hand, his breath rising in faint steam. His dog, a lean mountain hound with a mottled gray coat, trotted beside him, occasionally pausing to sniff the air. The dog lifted its head once, ears pricking sharply, and looked toward the high cliffs. Aaron followed the dog's gaze, though he could not see what it sensed. There was no sound, yet something about the valley felt held in an unusual stillness, as if time paused between heartbeats. The eagle launched into flight again as the wind shifted, its wings cutting through the cold air with quiet authority. It glided lower this time, sweeping above the treetops in broad arcs. The valley came into sharper detail, a fox's trail looping across the snow, the faint outlines of deer tracks leading toward the far ridge, a cluster of ravens perched in the branches of a frost-heavy spruce. The eagle's eyes missed nothing. It angled downward slightly, scanning, searching, not hurried, simply attentive. The land was an open book to it, every mark on the snow a sentence, every movement a meaning. Then it saw motion, a hare, thin but quick, darting along the edge of the frozen field. The eagle shifted its wings, adjusting its angle. Not a dive yet, not until the distance narrowed. The hare zigzagged between small mounds of snow, its instincts sharp, its movements erratic from fear. The eagle descended in a slow, controlled glide, narrowing the space between predator and prey with the inevitability of gravity. Aaron saw the chase from below. He stopped walking, his flock clustering around him as though sensing his stillness. The shepherd did not intervene. This was the order of things, the silent law of valley and sky. The hare saw the shadow overhead too late. The eagle folded its wings and dropped with deadly precision, striking the snow with a sharp burst of force. There was a brief blur of struggle, swift and without sound, and then the stillness returned. The eagle stood over its catch, feathers ruffled only slightly by exertion. It tore into the hare with efficient movements, no waste, no hesitation. The ravens began to gather nearby, waiting their turn. Even they knew the rhythm of the hunt. Take only after the strong have finished. Aaron watched, then resumed walking. His dog remained alert, but calm. The flock followed. There was nothing cruel in what they had seen, only life continuing in the way it always had. The eagle finished and lifted into the air again, its wings heavy now with renewed strength. It carried only what it needed and left the rest to the ravens and the smaller creatures who would come after. Rising once more toward its crag, it circled once above the valley. From this height, everything below looked simple, quiet, and unchanging. Though the eagle understood in its animal way that change always moved under the surface, slow and unseen. The sun dipped lower, shadows stretched. The valley breathed in winter's deep calm, and the eagle returned to its perch, where the wind carved endless patterns along the stone, and the world seemed to rest beneath it in silent waiting. The night arrived early, descending over the valley like a slow-moving veil of deep blue, the sky fading from pale silver into shadow without a clear moment of transition. The eagle remained perched on its wind-carved crag, feathers fluffed slightly against the cold, eyes half closed but always aware. The wind had changed direction, bringing with it a faint scent of wood smoke from the village below, and something else, something sharper, unfamiliar, unsettled. Far beneath, in the cluster of houses beside the frozen river, the villagers gathered inside for warmth. Aaron sat near the fire with his young son, Mikkel, who listened with wide, thoughtful eyes as Aaron spoke of the mountain and the creatures that lived upon it. "The eagle watches everything," Aaron said, his voice quiet, not meant as a lesson but simply a truth of the land. Not because it guards or judges, it watches because that is its way. Mikkel nodded, though he did not fully grasp the meaning. He only knew that the idea of a great bird watching the valley felt important, as though the mountain itself had eyes. Outside, the dog lifted its head, ears twitching at something distant, too faint for human hearing, but not for the keen senses of those who lived between the wild and the domestic. Higher up the slope, beyond the shepherd's fields, a lone wolf moved among the trees. Its coat was thick and mottled, its ribs not yet visible beneath the fur, but already tightening as winter deepened. It padded softly through the snow, leaving a trail that wound between the pines and overburied roots. Its nose lifted often, testing the air. The wolf had crossed this valley many times, knew its scent patterns, its safe passages, its hidden dangers. But tonight there was something new, something that prickled along the spine, an awareness of being observed. The wolf turned its head upward. The eagle, though distant, watched from the crag. For a long moment the two animals held each other in their gaze. The wolf did not fear the eagle. The eagle did not threaten the wolf. They simply recognized one another as beings shaped by the same laws: hunger, distance, endurance. The wolf continued on, heading toward the forest's edge, where the deer sometimes moved in the late hours, scraping at the snow for withered grass beneath. On the crag, the eagle finally spread its wings and launched into the night air. It did not hunt in darkness, but it flew to adjust its position, gliding along familiar currents of wind that wrapped around the cliffs. The moon, half hidden behind drifting clouds, cast a pale glow across the valley, outlining riverbanks, fields, and the dark shapes of farm buildings. The eagle dipped low enough to see the faint movement of sheep huddled near a fence, and the dim flicker of lantern light from Moran's window. It circled once, not out of interest in the humans, but because the valley was part of its world, and every night required a measure of its landscape. Then, the eagle returned to the crag, folding its wings neatly, settling back into the stillness of stone and sky. The valley lay in perfect calm. No wind rustled the pines. No animal cried out. Even the river, locked beneath ice, seemed to hold its breath. But this calm was not emptiness. It was a pause, a held moment, before the next shift of winter's slow, deliberate hand. Aron slept. Mikkel dreamed of wings. The wolf continued moving, and high above them all, the eagle watched, silent and resolute, a presence carved into the night as old as the mountain itself. The next morning came slowly with a dim, muted light that barely distinguished sky from snow, as though the world had been drawn only in shades of pale gray. Frost coated every branch in delicate crystals, making the pines shimmer silently when touched by the faint sun. The eagle remained still at first, its body aligned with the wind, letting the cold air move through its outer feathers, while warmth stayed locked near the skin. Hunger stirred now, not sharply, but with the steady insistence of life continuing. The eagle stretched its wings wide and took flight, gliding away from the crag along a high path where cliffs dropped away into the valley. Below, the shepherd Aron and his son Mikkel were already outside, tending to the sheep. The flock moved uneasily today, their ears flicking, their heads lifting often, scanning the horizon without clear reason. Aron noticed it too. He paused in his work and listened, though he heard only silence, the deep winter silence that seemed to swallow sound before it could form. Mikkel watched his father, sensing tension he could not name, and followed his gaze toward the slopes. At the forest's edge, the wolf had returned, leaner now after the long night. It kept its distance from the village, slipping between shadow and tree, but its presence brushed the edge of the valley's calm like a quiet ripple on still water. The eagle saw the wolf from above and circled once, not in challenge, but in acknowledgement. Their territories overlapped without conflict, for both understood the value of conserving energy in winter. The eagle continued downward, scanning the snow for movement. A lone pheasant moved clumsily near a patch of dried grass, its feathers bright even in the muted light. The eagle adjusted its wings and descended in a controlled fall, quick but precise. The strike was swift, the snow scattering in a flurry of white. The eagle killed cleanly, as it always did, and fed with measured efficiency. When it rose again, leaving the remains for the scavengers, its wings carried it back into the open air with a renewed steadiness. Aron saw the eagle return to the high crag and felt something settle inside him, though he did not know what. It was not reassurance and not fear, something more like recognition of a pattern older than memory. Mikkel followed his gaze and whispered, "Will it stay here all winter?" Aron rested his hand briefly on the boy's shoulder. "If the valley feeds it," he said quietly. if the wind allows it, if nothing disturbs the balance. The child did not fully understand, but the words stayed with him just the same. The wolf moved farther along the tree line, pausing only once to test the air before disappearing into the deeper forest where shadows clung close to the ground. The eagle resumed its place on the crag as the light began its slow slide toward dusk. The valley returned to its stillness, but this stillness felt different now, denser, more aware. The animal sensed it, even if the humans did not. Something subtle was shifting, like a story turning a page. The eagle stood alone against the growing twilight, its silhouette strong and unwavering. Below, the forest waited. The sheep clustered close. Aaron watched the mountains with thoughtful silence. Mikkel thought of wings and heights, and winter continued its quiet hold on the land, drawing each life in the valley a little closer to the next inevitable moment. The weather shifted on the fifth day, though only those who paid close attention to the mountains would have noticed. The sky, once a clear pale sheet, thickened with slow-moving clouds, and the wind that passed through the crags changed tone, from whisper to low hum, as though the air itself carried a warning. The eagle felt the change first. It lifted its wings slightly, feathers trembling in the current, and scanned the valley below. The world was still calm, but not in the natural way. It was the quiet that precedes something, the kind the earth holds when snow is about to fall heavy, or when predators draw too near to one another. Down in the valley, Aaron led his sheep along the lower pasture, closer to the village than before. The grass was thin here, but the place felt safer, less exposed to the forest. Mikkel walked beside him, carrying a small sack of grain to scatter where the sheep could reach it. The dog stayed close, its ears flicking often, its eyes shifting toward the tree line. Aaron noticed this, and though he said nothing, his hand tightened on his staff. The wolf had not been seen today, but that meant little. Wolves did not need to be seen to be present. High above, the eagle left the crag and rose into the slow-turning sky. It allowed the wind to lift it rather than forcing its wings against the cold air. The land beneath unfolded with its usual clarity, the river, the scattered huts of the village, the dark knots of pine along the slopes. But today, there was another shape moving in the valley, a second wolf, larger than the one seen before, heavier in the shoulders, walking with deliberate slowness. The eagle circled, observing the path the new wolf took. This one did not roam along the forest's edge. It moved toward the open pasture. The dog saw it next. A low growl rumbled in its chest, and Aaron turned sharply, his gaze following the line of the dog's stare. There, emerging from the brush, the wolf stepped into view. Not running, not threatening. Simply present, with the intent of hunger that the valley understood. The sheep clustered, bleating in soft, panicked bursts. Aaron moved between the flock and the wolf, staff held firm. The wolf stopped. It did not lunge. It did not retreat. It watched, calculating. Hunger had grown sharper now. The cold had taken more of its strength than it could afford. Mikkel froze behind Aaron, holding tight to the dog's collar as the dog strained forward with tense fury. The standoff stretched long and thin, like a tight thread ready to snap. Then, a shadow passed overhead, the eagle gliding low, sweeping across the pasture in a broad arc. Its presence did not frighten the wolf, but it changed the shape of the moment. The valley felt as though more than human and animal eyes were watching now. The land itself held breath. The wolf blinked once, slow, and turned away. It walked back toward the forest, not defeated, simply choosing energy over conflict. Aaron let out a breath he had not realized he was holding. The dog barked once, sharp and frustrated. The sheep slowly began to move again, though their restlessness lingered. Mikkel's hands trembled slightly, though excitement and fear were tangled together in him. "It didn't attack," he whispered. Aaron nodded. "It weighed the cost. We all do in winter." Overhead, the eagle rose again, gliding back toward the high ridge, its role not that of savior or omen, but witness, always watching the quiet shifting of survival below. As the day faded into evening, the valley felt changed, not undone, not threatened, but altered by the recognition of how close the line between peace and struggle truly was. The eagle returned to the crag, wings folding tight, silhouette steady against the gathering dusk. The clouds thickened. Snow would come soon, heavy, deep, unforgiving, and everything that lived in the valley, from the shepherd to the wolf to the eagle itself, would need to decide again how to endure.